Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, May 13th. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over just about everything you're ever going to need to know about the NBA draft lottery, the first three picks, what's going on with them, maybe some reform as well. In this segment, we turn our attention to college football. We are today joined by the host of the GSMC College Football Podcast, Jake. We're going to go over all of this craziness going on right now at the University of North Carolina and new head coach Bill Belichick. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with us here on a beautiful Tuesday, May 13th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into everything we need to know about Bill Belichick and the situation at UNC. Of course, it is kind of private, kind of public. It's been a weird mix of TMZ drama kind of sports reporting going on over there at Chapel Hill. Of course, a lot of this is going to be blown out of proportion because you have the greatest NFL head coach of all time and Bill Belichick leaving the NFL kind of disgracefully, not really getting a job after he wanted to get another. Shocking to me over there, but UNC takes him in, and he's promised to make an NFL style of football, but it started off kind of as anti-Bill Belichick, the culture as it possibly can. Jake, what's going on down there in North Carolina?
This is just a really interesting situation overall. And when you think of Bill Belichick of past, of this Patriots dynasty, right? This is a guy that was always super savvy with the media, always kind of knew how to avoid questions. You know, you think of the press conference where he's just answering every question of, we're on to Cincinnati. We're on to Cincinnati, right? That was just his answer. Notoriously tight-lipped, especially around injuries, stuff like that. But the page really seems to kind of have turned here with his venture into college football, where he's now being ever more present in the media. And he had a CBS interview a few weeks ago on the Sunday morning show, and where his girlfriend kind of interrupted multiple times. He was asked a question about how him and his girlfriend met, and she kind of stepped in and said, "We're not talking about this," which would have been a non-discussion, right? If he had answered that question, normally said, "Oh, we met on a plane ride in 2021," which was already kind of public knowledge. This had been announced already. That was how they started their relationship. That's how they met. But she steps in, kind of says, "We're not going to talk about this." It goes from a non-story to something that's much more interesting. And if you look at her role around North Carolina, there were emails that were leaked where he said that she needed to be CC'd on all future emails regarding pretty much all football operations at North Carolina, kind of has taken over almost as a PR manager type for Bill Belichick. And then you go to this today where Belichick sits down with SportsCenter on ESPN and basically says that Jordan Hudson has no role whatsoever in the North Carolina football program. Kind of seems like that's not really the case. They were also supposed to have Hard Knocks come and film them this year, document their season, the annual HBO series. They hadn't found an NFL team. They were supposed to go to Chapel Hill. That all kind of just fell apart. And it was rumored that Jordan Hudson was a big part of why that deal completely fell apart. So it seems like Bill Belichick is not really Bill Belichick anymore. Is this the true Belichick? And he just has kind of hidden it really well throughout his time as an NFL head coach? Or is this something where maybe outside forces are influencing him a little more and his decision-making process? And then will this translate to on the field? What's going to happen? there's kind of been question marks about, is his focus actually on the North Carolina football program? His girlfriend competed in a Miss Maine competition this weekend. He was there front and center, and kind of called into question of his commitment to North Carolina, to building this program. So the big question mark here is Bill Belichick actually really focused on North Carolina right now, or are there other kind of factors outside of his realm, his decision making, that's impacting what they're doing there on Chapel Hill?
Yeah, one side of this story that I think is really fascinating, at least to me, is that transition from the NFL to college football. It is a completely different world, right? You hear college football athletes, NFL athletes say it's so different. That's why we see coaches that were legendary in the college football ranks, like Nick Saban, like Urban Meyer, struggle in the NFL because you don't always have that kind of ultimate control, which is something that I felt Bill Belichick wasn't going to struggle with. But another thing that's new this year, at least in recent times, I should say, is the NIL side of it. The fact that you now have to kind of play GM with a bunch of 18-year-olds, right? These kids aren't necessarily, and their agents aren't necessarily, or if you can really call them agents, aren't necessarily negotiating in the best faith all the time, right? And there's still, it's a wild west of rules over there right now. You have no idea what kind of legislation is going to be passed. All of these bills going back and forth, settlements going back and forth between the NCAA and their medley of different lawsuits going on surrounding this issue in particular. I think it's tough for a guy like Bill Belichick at 76 years old to come in and just immediately adapt to this situation. He's been used to having it work one way basically his entire life. Now he has to shift and go to completely the opposite end of the spectrum when you're trying to build a team like this. I think actually something that he's trying to do, and maybe I'm way off base on this, is listen to his girlfriend a little bit more because she's frankly a lot closer in age to these athletes than he is. She kind of understands where they're coming from a little bit more than he might. And I think that's something that, while it's not his main goal, is something that he's trying to just get every single possible advantage out of whatever relationship that he has. Now, how much he's really in football, it seems like this is very much a temporary gig. He has in his contract written out, of course, that when he retires, his son is going to take over, which kind of already says as, hey, I'll coach for like a year or two maybe, but then I'm done here. So he doesn't seem all the way committed right away, which is something that I think also is a part of this that might have seeped in as well. He's living the retired life. He's living the retired life. He had to come out and do his thing, and he had a lot more media attention when he wasn't coaching. He had a lot more appearances on ESPN, a lot more appearances with Pat McAfee. Maybe that opened him up a bit. Maybe that changed the way he did things without him really realizing he got into the groove of doing media. There's a lot of things we don't know about this situation, of course. It's still ongoing. There's been flip-flopping reports of whether or not his girlfriend is banned from the program or not banned. Right now, we're on the not banned side of things, but tomorrow, maybe even 2 minutes from now, it could come out that she's banned again. There's just so much going on right now in this situation that is developing, but it is definitely a little concerning. You talk about a UNC team where their variance this season, it could be anywhere from college football playoffs to a team that misses a bowl game, right? They are probably the biggest variant team as a part of the Power Four simply because of Bill Belichick. He, as a coach, can change that program immediately, or he could sink them if he doesn't do it right. What kind of side of the coin, with all this drama coming out, are you leaning towards for a UNC outlook as far as this football season goes?
Yeah, honestly, I've been really struggling as well with projecting this UNC team because, like you said, their range of outcomes is wild. It's can go anywhere from them being a 5-win team to, potentially competing in the ACC. I don't know if they will be competing right away necessarily. I think this is certainly a team that could go 7-5, 8-4. I think 8-4 is probably realistic for them. We also look at the roster here. This is a roster very much in transition. Just in the spring portal, they lost 18 guys, brought in 16 guys. Um, did bring in a big time quarterback in South Alabama quarterback Gio Lopez, who's going to take over as the starter there. A guy that was super impressive for South Alabama, but transitioning to the ACC, will he be able to keep up that production? That's going to be a big question mark. But this is a roster that has holes everywhere pretty much. And they also lost their best pass rusher in Bo Atkinson, transferred to Ohio State in this portal, lost a couple other really solid pieces for them. So we're not really sure kind of what this team could look like. I certainly think that Bill Belichick will have some kind of positive impact for them on the field, right? You're talking about a guy that's arguably the greatest head coach in NFL history, in terms of just what he brought to the table. Just that experience, that level of expertise will give UNC a much needed boost at the minimum. Will that big jump occur this year? Could a big jump potentially occur next year? But it's also very possible that Belichick flames out at the college level. Like you said, this is a guy that was entrenched in the pro game. He hasn't been a college coach. I don't know if ever. I got to double check that. But if he was, it was 50 years ago. Um, this is a guy that is going to have to adjust to that college level. Will he be able to kind of talk to 18 to 22-year-olds on their level compared to when he's coaching grown men in the NFL? That's going to be a big challenge for him. So I think this is a roster that we're not sure kind of how they're going to look. I'm projecting for them right now about 7-5, 8-4. I think you're going to see a little bit of improvement from them on the field. I just don't know if they're going to make a huge jump this year. I think they're going to be a bowl team for sure. I just don't know. Will that big jump occur? Will it not? We're going to have to wait and see. I think Gio Lopez is going to be a big part of that conversation as their quarterback now. If he performs really well, the quarterback is the most important position in football. When your quarterback plays well, it helps your team out. So if Gio Lopez can do that there, potentially this is a team that could outperform expectations. I just don't know if I see them getting there this year. I think they're probably a 7-8 win team for this upcoming season.
Yeah, that is the big question. Quarterback, Gio Lopez is a guy I like. I've watched a lot of Sun Belt games graduating from James Madison, so we're familiar here a little bit with his game, and he's someone that could step up and play really good football, right? Again, it all comes down to the combination of quarterback and coaching. UNC lost a lot of talent, but Bill Belichick brought a lot in. I think you're right that the ceiling for this team, while it is super high, they're probably not going to hit there. And it's not necessarily because of the drama. It's because this team, any team that completely overhauls, generally needs to at least 1 year to start over, at least 1 year to figure out its identity a bit, and change what it's doing to be successful. So next year, I think, is the big year for UNC, but it has to start off at least a little positive. Otherwise, I think this Bill Belichick experiment is going to end a lot sooner than a lot of people think when it comes to UNC and really his entire role in college football. But we're going to move on. So thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to this segment here. Jake, thank you so much for joining us today. Go check him out. College Football Podcast here on GSMC. He's live every day, just like me. Go check him out. Lots of stuff. It's never a dull day in college football, ever. But thank you for joining me. We'll be right back here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast, talking about Trey Hendrickson and what's going on with him and the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll see you then.